We have been in the Matthew 25 mode, right? This idea that we've been journeying through the Gospel of Matthew. And today, of course, is about the idea of welcome, right? And so you will note the title of the sermon, Welcoming or Welcome-ish, right? Which is where we're kind of headed here. But this is also, June is kind of a social justice month in a lot of ways, right? A lot is going on in June. And so obviously we have Pride in June, where we celebrate the contributions of the LGBTQ community. Juneteenth, right, is tomorrow, where we will be talking about obviously the racial complications in this nation, which are by no means solved. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of welcome. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I would defy you to find a town in which most of the church signs don't have this word on them. Welcome became like this super buzzword at some point in my lifetime. I don't know when it happened because I was probably an atheist at the time. But I noticed when welcome began popping up, right, in churches. A lot of them were piggybacking on national movements of advertising, right? All are welcome. We welcome all. God loves everybody. And so there is some variation of this in most church bulletins or church signage or church advertising, right? Everyone is welcome. We love everybody. Now, some churches actually mean it. I will give you that. Our sign has the word welcome on it. But you'll notice that I put underneath it, seriously, everyone is welcome, right? Because the problem with this concept has been that some of those churches don't mean it. In fact, a lot of those churches don't mean it. So they say it because they want to give you the impression that they've gone through some great transformation, right? And suddenly everyone is welcome. We don't judge anybody, and we love you, and we want you to come in, and all of that stuff. But all they have actually done is change the advertising. They haven't changed the internal structures of the theologies of the church that they are currently worshiping in or abusing people with, right? They haven't changed those things. And so it seems like each time the church struggles, sort of in whatever way, and we are struggling right now, we decide that it's time for us to be more welcoming. And so we're going to change our signs, and we're going to attract more people, and we're going to make more money because people will come in and donate to the church because it says on the sign that we love everybody. The problem is we don't mean it. Churches want to be seen as welcoming, but they don't want to do any actual transformative work to make that welcome coherent or lasting. The words of the church, the words that we put out into the public, are supposed to be in harmony with the way we behave. That is sort of why this welcome idea has become really problematic for me. And I'm going to just start, I think, telling churches to take it off. Stop saying it. Because frankly, it is the LGBTQ community that is probably the largest victim of this alleged welcome, right? This false notion that we will welcome. Yeah, sure. Look, I've been around, and I will tell you, yes, they will welcome your membership. They will welcome you into the doors. They will hug you. They will certainly welcome your donations. Heaven knows that. But then you find out that once you have become a member, and once you have joined the church, and once you have started giving money to the church, you think, hey, I'd really like to be more involved in this church. And then the pastor says to you, no. LGBTQ people can't lead in this church. Divorced people cannot lead in this church. And women, forget about it. If women are in the pulpit, the whole thing falls apart, right? So that can't happen. And if you deviate from our theological party line at any point, if you question anything, or want the church to actually speak about your existence or your rights, yeah, you can forget about that too. And so on. And if you do happen to be a member of the LGBTQ community. We would love to welcome you in as long as you are prepared to change everything about yourself, suppress your identity, and let us torture you until you decide that you are more like us. None of this is actual evangelism, and it's all harmful hypocrisy. And it's been going on for a really, really, really long time. And add to that our current situation, in which I will echo the words of a mom who said, can we stop with the pride slogans and just say LGBTQ people are in danger? That is the slogan of pride. People are getting killed. People are committing suicide at alarming rates because of a very dangerous and misguided relationship between a political movement and a religious movement bent on power at the destruction of the least of these. For example, we are watching an all-out assault on transgender people in the United States. Assault. Period. I just saw yesterday this very strange post on Facebook about how afraid I should be of drag performers. Now, I'm going to bet most of you have never met a drag performer, but if you have, it's one of the least threatening human beings you will ever meet. And so we find ourselves in another moment of having the word welcome stolen away from us. Just the way thoughts and prayers have been stolen away from us. We can't say it anymore. It was already hypocrisy. People don't believe us when we say this stuff, folks. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And it's not our fault. We are paying the price for a movement that has used the mantle of the church to destroy other human beings. And we are the ones called to answer for it. The loudest voices in the Christian church, even in this moment, are the voices of division, segregation, bigotry, and the weaponizing of religion. If you don't believe me, watch cable news for a while. They don't interview Pastor Ben. They interview Pastor Crazy Pants, who hates everybody. LGBTQ people do not trust the church. I'm not sure they should, frankly. I know that because I'm one of them. And we have earned that distrust. So let me tell you why it is that I believe the church has come to an inflection point. We should not just be welcoming people into the church. Welcoming is not enough. Welcoming is not what Jesus did. Yes, Jesus was a welcoming guy, but Jesus was an affirming guy. Jesus believed in the affirmation of the human beings that stood in front of him. He embraced them as they were. The only thing that changes about people when Jesus affirms them is that they can proclaim faith freely and without fear. Jesus never says, I will heal you, but guess what? You can't be you anymore. I will love you, but you have to sacrifice who you are at the altar of the temple's comfort. So, I am going to give you my complicated theological reason why we should be welcoming the LGBTQ community into our churches. Are you ready for it? We should do it because God said so. We should do it because Christ lived it. And we should do it because there is no, zero, not one, not a single Bible verse that gives us permission to do otherwise. The Bible does not condemn any L or G or B or T or Q person on this earth, in this world, for any reason whatsoever, and saying otherwise is a fraud. Now, I know I've said that with a certain directness that you're not used to from the mystery-loving Pastor Ben. But I believe this to be a fundamental truth. I believe this to be a fundamental truth, a core value that God does not just reveal to us, but that God revealed to me in my conversion. Because without it, I would not be standing here. So Christians, if you are listening to me, any of you, anywhere, the idea that there is a biblical basis for the hatred of, the violence toward, or even the rejection of the LGBTQ community is one of the ugliest theological frauds ever perpetuated upon the church in the history of the church. And as far as our transgender siblings, who, by the way, are included in the L's, the G's, the B's, the T's, and the Q's, whenever I'm challenged about welcoming them also, when I am told by these very knowledgeable humans that transgender people are insulting God by saying that somehow God has made a mistake. God made you a boy. God made you a girl. Who are you to question God, right? God doesn't make mistakes, they tell me. I won't tell you what's going through my head when they say that. But anyway, I reply to them simply this. The ongoing mystery of God's creation is not something that I understand completely. It is not something that you understand completely. In fact, it's not something that any human being understands completely. There is no complete human understanding of God's will, God's ways, or God's creation of this earth, or the ongoing miracle of that creation. Any creation, the creation of any human life, any human being, is part of that mystery. Ours is not to question God's motives for creating any human being, transgender or not. Ours is to love them. Ours is to love them as part of that beautiful and immense creation that, yes, is hard to understand and gets a little scary sometimes. But it's not ours. And so to accept that God may well create people we don't understand, that God may create people that challenge our understandings of everything, that God has consistently in the history of faith used unusual people to challenge the thinking of his people, God's people, then perhaps then it is the act of rejecting transgender folks. That act is how we actually insult God's creation. That act is how we deny God's mystery. And of course, I guess I can't leave out those poor drag performers. Yeah, and I mean, seriously though, I mean, there have been bomb threats, there have been attempted beatings, right? Well, first of all, most Christian church folks don't even know what a drag queen is. They only found out because somebody told them what it was and told them why to be afraid of it, right? They add drag queens to the sort of storyline about how dangerous we are to your children. How dangerous we are. I mean, drag queens are living Disney characters. I can't imagine anything a kid wouldn't like more. But anyway, but they add this idea, we're dangerous. We're predators. We're coming for your kids. We can't support these people, not the church. They're dangerous for kids. It's always for kids, right? It's always danger to kids. It's one of those weird blended attacks, right? Like it's both a religious and a political attack at the same time. And basically what we're doing here is using fear, demonizing other communities of people, making you afraid of them so that we can manipulate you into thinking, believing, and yes, I'm going to say it, voting against your own actual interests. Child sexual abuse is a predominantly white, straight, male, cisgender crime. period. Your kids are more at risk of abuse by a family member, a Boy Scout leader, or a priest than an LGBTQ person. Those are statistical truths in this nation. And assigning that sin to other groups of people because you can't handle the reality that people like yourself might be doing these horrible things does not make it that community's sin. It makes it your own self-delusion. Oh, and by the way, as a side note, I'm not about to start taking moral advice on the wellness of children from the same folks who are doing nothing to stop them from being shot in their schools. I say all of this because we find ourselves in a dangerous time. I have said it before, and I'll say it again. I have never been more afraid to live in this country than I am right now. In fact, Sean and I have discussed what is the switch that means we have to leave the United States. Not jokingly, that was a serious conversation. And I've had it with other gay folks too. What does it mean when it's no longer safe for us to walk down the street? Because friends, it isn't. Because even in our comfortable places, this hate still gets us. It hurts. It hurts a lot. But the church has a choice to make now. We've been faced with this choice before, and it split the church in two. But our question is this: will we perpetuate the justification of hatred, ignorance? Will we condone violence and deny the love and hope of God to any human being based on who they are and what they decide God thinks about them and what we decide God thinks about them? Will we be a continuing part of the traumatizing of children? Yes, children. It's about the kids, remember? What about the transgender kids? Living in fear constantly, little kids. Committing suicide. Little kids choosing death rather than face this. I know that because I've been there too. Little kids are hurting badly. Their parents are afraid. People are leaving communities, neighborhoods, places they've lived all their lives because it is no longer safe to exist there. And so do we want to be a part of that? Do we want to be the institution that is used to justify that kind of behavior? Is that who we are? No. God, no. Or will we accept the fact that the love of God is bigger than our fear, that violence and rejection are anti-Christ, and that the God revealed in Jesus Christ is not bound by the frailties and limitations of human understanding, and frankly, God doesn't care if loving other people makes you uncomfortable? Will we be the voices that break the spirits of other human beings in the name of God, or will we be the voices that heal and love others in the name of God? Welcome is not a word. Welcome is a commandment. It is a holy expectation. It is a divine directive placed upon the church since its inception and even before then. Look in the Old Testament and see how important hospitality is. See how many conditions are placed upon it. We do not get to challenge that commandment. We don't get to edit it. We don't get to amend it. We don't get to decide that we don't like it. Our comfort is absolutely secondary to the role we are asked to play as servants and givers of welcome. We are servants, not self-preservationists. And if Jesus Christ did not place conditions on his ability to welcome people, who are we to even start doing it? Finally, I will just say that every time the church decides that it is going to reject people, the Southern Baptist Convention just rejected women. Every time the church decides it's going to reject people, it silences the voice of God and God's revelation that comes through those people. It is time for us as the church to recognize something that I think is obvious, but probably important. The church was not built by perfect people. The church was not built by only male people. And I will wager the church was not only built by straight people. The church was built by a group of ragtag misfits that God decided should do this work. The church was built by people like Paul, who was a raving, bloodthirsty maniac before he became the beloved apostle, hunting Christians. God works through disciples. They're nobody significant, right? I don't think any of them had advanced degrees in theological understanding. Why does he choose us? He chooses us because God can essentially work through anyone. He chooses us because God reveals God's self in us, to us, and through us. And so, as I say all the time, when you are harming someone, and I use that word harm to mean a lot of things, by the way. You don't have to punch somebody to hurt them. When you are attacking people for their identity, whether it be politically or religiously or just because you're a jerk, you aren't attacking us. You're attacking God. You aren't denying us. You are denying God. So I'm sorry, but I will end with this declarative statement. There is no Christian basis for the rejection of anyone. You can look for it, and you can have Bible scripture wars, which I checked out of a long time ago, but it's not there. So welcome to the Scipioville Presbyterian Church. Amen.